Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are starting our last session for the day. The road to IP workflow in production. Our chairperson, Mr. Peter Bruce, President IABM, will be chairing the session. I would kindly request him to introduce the speakers and start the session. Thank you.
Right, okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and we're on the last slot. So, firstly, so if we, let's say, introduce from the far right. So, if I could firstly introduce Thierry Fautier, who is the video strategy at Harmonic. As Vice President of Video Strategy at Harmonic, Thierry is in charge of defining and driving execution of long-term strategy for Harmonic's video business. So, very impressive. Secondly, we have in the middle there, hold on, I've got my order sorted out. Jayant, Kharche, no, that I know, who is with Doordarshan and is presently working as Deputy Director General in Doordarshan in New Delhi. And thirdly, we have Mr. Mehra from VTI, who's system integrator and supplier, and extremely well-known face within the industry. He is also ex-Doordarshan and very knowledgeable, obviously, about IP workflows, of which he did a presentation just now about where we were with the IP workflows. My presentation, yeah. So what we're going to do is have effectively 3 presentations. So my one is really talking and focusing on where we are in terms of IP workflows within the production environment. And maybe some of the topics have already been covered. So let's go to this. It's up there, sorry. Okay, so firstly, for those people who are not familiar with the IABM, my name is Peter Bruce. I am the Director for APAC for the IABM. We are the trade association running about 40 years, that's fine, running about 40 years, non-for-profit trade association, of which we have about 500 corporate members, of which Harmonic is one of them. And part of our mandate is to, let's say, help the industry and our members move forward with different technology and understand the state of technology. So this is what we're going to do in the presentation today. So basically, that's probably even better. Okay, good. And then there we go. So, so basically what we're talking about, and you know, it's great that we have obviously end user from Doordarshan on the stage and some experience here. But we're talking about something potentially quite simple, which is really moving from the cable on the left to the cable on the right. And really, we should talk about where the confusion is and what the issue is. And of course, I think anybody here understands that the topic is, let's say, a lot more deeper than just moving cable. So. What I also want to just talk about, and you know, even if we talk about Doordarshan, for example, they have been using IP somewhere within Doordarshan, even if it's their IT network with their emails. So there has been file-based activities already. There's been IP delivery already, and for sure they're doing that. What I'm focusing on is the IP production for studio facilities, and also there's the backhaul IP. So just trying to break down what this simple 2-letter word means in terms of broadcast, but it's a very wide topic and it's already been used for many years. So I'm going to focus on the production and the studio facility. Yes, it's this stuff. And this is what is, you know, let's say the topic, particularly within the industry, of course, in the last 2 years in particular, and explain where we are, where we're going, and where the confusion is, and hopefully try and clear up some of the confusion. So file-based activities, you know, for 15 years since the world of profiles and so forth, there were TV stations moving files and video files, and even people at home are using their mobile phones and sending that off as a file-based workflow. So there's absolutely nothing special about that. And IP delivery has a different, let's say, meaning of what we're going to talk mostly about. But let me talk about IP delivery. So the skeptical side will be about production, and this is where, when we talk in the close production workflow, a lot of people will talk about the IP delivery and say, well, or think from the IP delivery, which is OTT, and we're talking about packets dropping out or whatever. Well, it's not that secure. It's not 5 nines. You can't trust that IT stuff anyway. There's no standards, and this is what we're going to address. Too complex, able to attacks and cybersecurity. Anyway, SDI works well as it is, so why anyway are we going to move to IP? So let's take a lot of those topics. Okay, first thing about the 5 nines. So 99.999% reliability, which you get out of an SDI cable. Now, firstly, when you talk about the second delivery side of OTT, yes, when you send things OTT, this is best efforts of the internet, and it depends on your coverage. When you are talking about your studio side, you are talking about controlled networks where you're responsible for the bandwidth, you're responsible for the signal, and you're responsible for what's going on. So we use provision and groom networks. You can't trust the IT stuff. That IT stuff all crashes, right? Now, this is not consumer stuff that we're talking about within the studios. We're talking about enterprise level equipment. And also, what we are doing is controlling that network. So these kind of spikes that you'll get where you're going to drop packets is not happening within the studio IP production. So we have to make that quite clear. Okay, we'll talk a bit more about the standards. And yes, OTT has found its way with many different standards and ways of distributing OTT. As Mr. Mehra's presentation earlier, we talked about the actual standards that are there. So 2110 of its different forms was actually, I think it's ratified around October, November, not even the beginning of this year. And the standards are being laid down and set of what we're doing. There are things like auto detect, auto provisioning, which is coming along, which is going to make that complexity a lot easier, and it's going to help things settle down in terms of the IP workflow. So have a look at this particular slide. We won't go into details at the moment, but this slide you'll find on the internet, which lays down very clearly where the standards are so that IP is going to work within the studios. Okay, it's too complex. Yes, there is a certain amount of complexity when you do a point-to-point, you move from a point-to-point cable within an SDI workflow where you're running maybe multiple channels over one cable. And the complexity is going to ease as auto detect and so forth starts to happen. So yes, at this stage, perhaps it is slightly more complex, but it is coming. So, and new standards are going to ease that complexity. Okay, IP real, or is it really happening? There are a lot of examples in the last 2 years where IP workflow, and what we're talking about today, one of them which I always highlight is Arena, where you have Arena 2 years ago, basically, or a year and a half ago, have set up, now I think they have something like 6 trucks all in IP. The reason why they've done that, and maybe it's not relevant in India at the moment, is when they went to UHD, the bandwidth and the having quad link for any signal in a router and the amount of channels that they had to have with a 32 camera system, the router system was not going to work. So they had to go IP. And from our own surveys, and we have end-user surveys at NAB and IBC. This one is from NAB. The key reason for people going large broadcasters is for the routing and networking of IP. And when we look at IBC, routing and networking is the key issue within the studios. And this is where the IP routing is going to be more efficient, and it's going to be, in terms of cost efficiency, space and so forth, it's going to get better. The other thing is where you look at the supply side and our members, if you like, when we've polled them, at least 91% are providing, let's say, products or developing products which will be coming out, have come out or will be coming out next year, the following year, in the new standards 2110, SMPTE 2110. So it is happening. So why would you move to IP transition? As we said, that the SD is working fine, so why do I need it? Okay, you can have that, okay, maybe it's more complex, but you can have more capability with multi-signals being carried over one cable, bidirectional, so which is not available on an SCI cable just piping one video signal down. Routing and routing paths and reassigning stuff is a lot more flexible. Workflow and operational agility. Of course, we've talked about it even in the last session and through this day about virtualization and cloud services. And this will help that virtualization happening. And as we're talking about the cricket with Sri Lanka and India, you know, this is a typical reason why you have to move to IP. But I'm still not comfortable with IP. I only know SDI well. So there is issue. There is issue where we are and where we need to be and how we're going to move. So there's a dirty little secret about the whole thing. IP and SDI can work seamlessly together. You can gradually enter, as you go ahead, a hybrid system. So we're not suggesting in any way you're ripping out your whole SDI infrastructure, but you can work in a hybrid way. So it is most really where a lot of systems are going in at the moment. Ideally, if it's just an IP system like that truck, then things are going to work a lot more, let's say, more seamlessly. There is now PTP timing, and there are, let's say, the facilities in the broadcast side, which has now been, let's say, agreed on how it's working out. So, but you can have an SCI core with an IP island, an IP system with SCI interfaces, and you can work on different levels. So when we talk about, and we were talking earlier about the, let's say, the possibility if you buy something and it's out of date tomorrow, with IP, you can move SDI, you can move HD, SD, 625, whatever video through the same cable. So you are protected in quite a lot of ways. So IP, SDI and IP will continue to live together. SDI will have a long tail. So SDI will still be there for some time, that's for sure. But the next stage, I think for a lot of studios, particularly in India, will be, let's say, the gradual move, the hybrid move from IP, SDI to IP. What you have to understand is the difference between the standards. So 2110 was, SMPTE 2110 was, let's say, ratified the end of last year, which allows, and this is what you need to read into, the separation of the video, the audio signals, the metadata within the workflow. What it also allows, and money is bandwidth, instead of an SCI cable where you're sending everything down one channel whether you need it or not, you can send just the metadata, you can send just the audio channels or the video channels if it's silent video. Excuse me. So, design the implementation as HD today. You can still work with SDI and you can still add IP. IP doesn't constrain growth, and this is the future-proofing, because if you're buying SDI systems now, you're potentially actually having that future-proof issue. So they can run together, and basically you just have an island, and then you can have your new system working with the SDI world. So I'll shoot forward. And If it's a greenfield facility, you can, of course, the ideal way is going IP throughout that system, and that is the most efficient way. So if you do have a simplified, let's say, SDI system, you can then change that system, and then you can have the core switching, for example, in IP. Or you could have integrated SDI router, and then you can work the other way around. Could be just the monitoring side. So there are ways of moving to the IP next stage, and this is what I'd urge the stations. Think about moving to IP, away from SDI, but in a step format. So it can be incremental changes. There are, of course, advantages and disadvantages of all systems. So, you know, what is going to start to happen is there's going to be IP native products within an SDI solution, so you're going to have to go the other way in the coming years. You know, the move to IP, deploying an SDI system as the core, you can have a hybrid approach, or you can have a pure IP approach. Now, understand the standards of what's happened. So, SMPTE 2022 is, in essence, taking the SDI stream and effectively replacing that SDI cable with all the video, audio, ancillary data down one cable, which happened to be an IP cable. Now, where we are on the far right with 2110 is that we break out those different audio, video, ancillary data, and you can even, when you work within the format, send, if you have a logo at a low resolution, you just send the data of that logo within the screen. So you can send multiple channels and only send what you need down that cable. You can send multiple channels down one cable. So the SDI to IP migration, so 2110, what you need to do and how you need to move, because, you know, very granted that there's a lot of, and this is worldwide, this is not just in India, a lot of very nervous video engineers who are nervous about IP. So, can you mix and match? And this is what you need to learn. You can build islands, and you can build an infrastructure around both. How does it work with Genlock? So, PTP timing, there is then a unified clock which can work between SDI and our wonderful SPG to SMPTE 2110 so that your timing works. And this also has, let's say, because you can stamp timing. So if you're separating the audio or the metadata, you can also stamp this within your timing frames. So if you send two signals down two different paths, you know exactly where they are, which you cannot do with SDI and AES separately. You've got to learn and have your head around how wrapping and debugging multiple streams in each cable. So this has got to be learned. I'm not saying that it's skills necessarily the traditional broadcasters really need to know at the moment with SDI, but IP is also bidirectional. So learn about the advantage of that and learn about different networks of understanding how you can then, let's say, transport the signals across different networks. So understand the system workflow. There's a lot of information already online, and you can go to our site, SMPTE site, who really explains a lot of this stuff, so you can do a lot of self-learning. But training the staff and training the engineers is very important. What you need to understand is the SMPTE 2110 -10, -20, 21. We're still waiting, as Jesh said from Dolby about the compressed audio, but there are standards for the compressed video already, and then there's also the data standards. So finally, to move to IP, you need to ask questions, and this is what we're going to do today on the chat on the panel. Okay, how does SDI IP hybrid fit the picture? Do I need to do that? Why is it going to benefit me going to IP? And hey, if it does make sense and you stay in SDI, that is also okay. You know, but you have to also understand, are my staff trained? Do they understand, if they are video broadcast engineer, do they understand what IP, and more importantly, and we are running courses for IP courses, there are people with Cisco certification who have to go on those courses to understand the video side. And there are video people who have to understand the IP side. So this is happening in both directions. And don't think also that the IT guy has all the answers, because they don't necessarily understand the broadcast, us broadcast guys, right? At the end of the day, will it all be virtualized in a data center? Maybe not tomorrow, but it's coming, and it's very possible. But you also have to understand what those modules are, much like a linear workflow, is happening within the centers. And we mentioned in the last session live remote productions. This is one application which is really happening now already. We learned about the cricket, the 2020 cricket in Sri Lanka, of course. This is allowing more production, more operations to happen. So also virtualization. And also ask the question, what is inside my gateway? What is actually happening? What signals are going along that IP? You cannot take a cable out like a BNC and a U-Link and then look at it on a scope. It's a different way of working, but it's not scary. Okay, that's my part. We've, in this slide, taken away the SDI cable, and we've just left the IP cable. So I'm going to pass over to Thierry, and he'll just do a quick presentation. Let me take that. So you don't have my presentation? No. No. This is? No.
Sorry, guys. I sent that over IP and didn't come. So I have to go USB.
I think your packet was gone somewhere.
Okay. Thank you. Perfect. How do I go full screen?
That's behind you.
Doesn't go.
That's full screen.
Oh, okay. Moving. Undo. Undo. Okay. No. You damaged it. Undo. You have to undo. You have to undo. Okay. Sorry for the technical problem. So I'm Thierry Fautier. I'm going to go back. Yes, perfect. So I'm Vice President of Video Technology, and I'm representing Harmonic, who is a well-known technology company who is doing multiple things. So we are video delivery technology provider and also working on the cable edge technology. We have a 360 million revenue last year, and we are serving content provider, broadcaster, and service provider, including OTT1, which was the discussion of yesterday. So basically, our customer base is quite broad. Of course, we have customers in India. Some of them are in this room. And we are also serving the cable market for the DOCSIS 3.1. We are doing what we call the CCAP distributed architecture. So SDI is not dead. So lead customers have started the migration, but SDI will be around for a long time. And we got this from a survey that was presented in December by Harmonic. And you see, we have already started the transition within the next 12 months, sometime in the next 24 months, meaning that this is not a frantic move and migration. And we'll use SDI for the fours, it's still 16%. So you see, it's quite balanced between I want to make a move, I'm planning a move, I might do a move, I might not do a move. So which means we are still in the transition period, and I think this type of discussion is right on the money. I hope we have a good representation here of frantic versus conservative. And of course, my company is not interested to push customer, but more to accompany customers. Of course, IP offers significant advantage in flexibility. So Peter mentioned SIMT 2110 will enable greater flexibility for IP workflow compared to the SMPTE 2022-6. So before we continue, I would like to make a quick poll in this room. Who has heard about 2022-6? So this was the SDI over IP protocol that everybody felt was the solution to our problem. And then after that, people started to dig, to look at the flexibility, at the future-proofness, the control aspect, because data plane is one thing, control plane is nothing. And then people have really made a shift, I think, in 2017, Peter, from 2022-6 to 2110 in SIMT. And SIMT, I think, has been the one to push this transition. But you have also, you mentioned the roadmap, the GNT roadmap, EBU, ATSC, all those operator AMWA are really pushing in the same direction. We don't have too much divergence anymore, thanks to ST2110. And this is why we are very confident implementing this standard. So, of course, for those who had started to work on 2022-6, we had in our product line defined the playout talking to the encoder on 2022-6. And, of course, we have also started the transition from 2022-6 to 2110. Same equipment, software upgrade. So for our customer, this is not too much of an effort. It's just a software upgrade between the two equipment, playout server and encoder. So also I wanted to give you some number because we always talk about protocol flexibility. At the end of the day, what is going to cost you if you go 2022-6 versus 2110-20? And you see, depending on the resolution, you can save 15%, 16%, but sometimes you see 720p50, you are basically losing in terms of traffic on the IP network. So this is an important aspect. It's not always saving when you go 2020-10, but at the end of the day, there is no discussion from a purely bandwidth point of view. It is always more beneficial. Here, this is the alphabet of all the different standards coming from, of course, the same source. And you will see during our discussion, I hope we'll be able to spend a bit more time on all those different versions of the specification. You have everything, control plane, timing, uncompressed audio, video. So it's quite extensive. And of course, not all of the standards are at the same level. Some have been published, and some are pending, or some are also at the vote level, which means it's still not completely agreed inside the SMPT. So, is it all about the protocol? The answer is no. you have to put that in the context of what we call the environment deployment, being an appliance, a bare metal, a virtualized environment, or a cloud environment. And today, I am not able to tell you who is going to win the race because it very much depends on what is your target environment. Some people like to buy boxes, and some people think they'd better be off in the cloud, private or public cloud. So we have all those different parameters, and I think it's very important for you to understand where you want to put your production equipment. The only thing we can tell you safely is that the public cloud in uncompressed format, especially if you plan to go Ultra HD, is not going to be economical. That's all for me. I hope it's aligned with the party line, and I'm glad I could.
I think we're on the same book, so.
Yeah, and it's not a surprise because Harmonic is first IABM member, and second, we're also one of the co-founders of Engg. So we spend a lot of time, and we sweat a lot on all those interrupt plug fest. I think you probably have to tell us how many people were at the NAB one and IBC one.
I know the IBC one was, I think, 53 manufacturer suppliers. And maybe that's part of my presentation, that where we're at, this year we will not really do an interop as such because there's no need when everything is already interoping. So it's like saying, does SDI work? Well, we know it works. So the last 2 years, we've been very heavily involved with AIMS, doing the interop at NAB and IBC and ironing out, these problems. Now we're at the point where we're explaining more case studies, and we will show demonstration of it working, but we won't have 50 suppliers because it gets to a point where there's no point. So we are at that level where a lot is working, but also from our members in the supply side, as I mentioned, that many are supplying more and more kits. So it could be a camera with a IP interface on, or it could be, routers or whatever. That is already complying to SIMT, 2110 or so yes. So I think it's 53 that we had at IBC. So it's impressive.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Jayant, if we could come up and get a view from Doordarshan. So this would be certainly interesting.
क्या हो रहा है इसमें से USB में देखिए मॉर्निंग सेशन वाला है यस दिस इज माइग्रेशन यस करेक्ट हेलो Yeah, hello friends. Thank you, Chairman. I'm Jayant Kharche from Doordarshan. I have very few points to speak out with the perspective of broadcasters and for as far as the IP migration is concerned. What I feel is that there are many positive factors which are helping which will affect the broadcasters to adopt the full IP workflow, like scope of potential for long-term revenue growth, flexibility of providing additional facilities based on the new challenges faced by broadcasters in existing infrastructures, especially for non-linear broadcasting social network. IP implementation along with IGMP may help reducing seat adjustment and triggered switching among the group of equipment if implemented properly. That's what I feel, that if IP is backbone is created and all equipment in the PCR are connected with each other, the IGMP protocol for sending, like earlier session also Mr. Stephen was telling that destination switching and source switching, if those kind of protocols are implemented properly with among the different OEM equipments for implementation, that will help us to adopt it faster. Then at the same time we expect that the flexibility in adaptation of futuristic services which may be posed by IoT based on services will be helpful. As of now, which we see why IP is mostly because of OTT and other things. People want more, my same content can be processed in a different manner at the same time, and it can be delivered to the users in a shortest possible time. So this IP may help in that. The other thing is that what has been achieved in the file-based workflow up till now is handling video content, handling, storage, simultaneous playout. Similarly, what I feel is that this similar to the mobile phones and smartphone, we are having more and more apps. So nowadays many broadcast equipment manufacturers are coming to a single platform and adding the software on that as just like an app, and getting the functionalities added on the same video. The same stream can be processed and delivered in the output port. So if these things are allowed and it comes up with the new technology, it will be helping for the broadcasters to adopt it faster. The other point is that broadcasters are also feeling as a consumer of the equipment, does the migration of IP is being pushed because it is essential for 4K and higher resolutions. As the earlier speaker, Mr. From Harmonic is also has told that from 3 SDI it has come to 1 IP connection. That is the advantage there, but in the present context where the Indian perspective is there, most of the studios are in SDI domain, and in the current context of India, how to justify additional investment in IP workflow in place of SDI workflow when even SD TV distribution is not out of sight and HD TV is not the obvious choice of masses due to last mile connectivity, bandwidth and cost of content and subscription basically. In the morning session also, one of the speaker has told that the people are shifting to the HD boxes at the receiving end, but they are not subscribing to the HD subscriptions to that number. So that is why the revenue coming out of this investment is not, if that is not in sight, because any investment from broadcaster will depend on the revenue earning after the investment. So that is the another concern. But as most of the speakers are telling that it is obvious and it has to come. So the broadcaster, those who are on like our Doordarshan and other broadcasters in India, they will have these challenges for adoption of IP workflow. How we will do synchronization. It's basically the training part. The people have to unlearn SDI synchronization and go to PTP and other this delay, packet losses and these things. How we do the monitoring is another early resolution and location of fault. As of now, our networks are serial, 1 to 1. One in output goes to another equipment, then it goes to next equipment in serially. But as the earlier presentation also, it was shown that in IP world they are connected in a very complex manner. So the content is going from one equipment to another equipment, coming back again adding something and going to another equipment, going back. So many things are happening in virtual world. Though it is encapsulated in the GUI package that the signal is going from this to this, this to this, but still in the back end it is very complex. So we have to train our people for troubleshooting, monitoring, localization of fault, troubleshooting, and then rectification. Another concern is the how we will do the troubleshooting, IP conflict management, how to identify the faulty interfering equipment in broadcast transport chain in minimum possible time for early isolation and mitigation of fault, as I have told. How we will do the manpower training, that maintenance engineer, operation engineers, measurement parameters and level of adjustment is to be taken care of. Then how additional cost of for measuring instrument in IP domain is the another concern, that if we shift from SDI to IP, then we will have to upgrade our SDI measuring instruments to IP. That is also a cost. Additional cost of skilled engineers, as already both the speakers have told, the training of IT engineer in broadcast workflow or training of broadcast engineer in the IT workflow is a very important point. Migration plans option, what I feel based on these all discussions and informations available, it is it the gradual or hybrid or full IP? Is it the complete migration at one studio, at least one studio, while keeping another studio in SDI? Is it complete migration IP in all studio at any one center while keeping the another centers in SDI? These are the possible options, and out of this what I feel that to begin with, it will be better to completely migrate to IP, at least IP workflow at least in one studio, in one center where many numbers of studios are there, suppose 2, 3 or 4. So we should go for one studio with full IP workflow to so as to make use of all features of IP workflow standards. Otherwise, what if and the use of spared equipment can be used in other studio, but it will also depend on the techno-commercial and techno-political considerations and availability of fund. If it is not a fear of disruption, suppose obsolescence, but I feel that if one studio is converted in the full IP workflow, we will be able to get the real feel of implementation, and the people will be, the engineers in the center will be able to get the full training as well as the learning and the problems of this workflow while keeping the other studios stable for the stable service. So that's what I feel, and if we can do that, that is good. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, Jash. Jan. So sorry? No, absolutely. You are, you're very much on the sharp end of it, because you obviously, VTI is a system integrator. So, I mean, my first question is, do you have IP systems already out there that you are doing? And you know, if I'm a customer and I say to Doordarshan, or Doordarshan comes to me, I want an IP system. What is your response
You
to
see,
that?
if you are talking about the IP systems, yes, certainly we are selling a lot of IP systems. We are integrating many IP systems. But if you are talking of SDI over IP, sorry, we have not done any. Yes,
Yes, exactly.
it is a fact. Yes, we are using IP for the servers. We are using the IP for interconnecting the servers and the post-production suites. We are using the IP for controlling the cameras. We are using the IP for sending the video over the IP in the case of PTZ camera by using NDI compressions. Yes, that we are doing. But the Kharche has raised one point that IP has come because of 4K. this is a point which he has brought in. You see, certainly, when you're talking of 4K means you're talking of 12 gig.
Yeah, yeah.
And 12 gig cannot go on copper. Of course, now people have brought some sort of cables which can take that on
12 gig SDI.
Yes, but yes, to send 12 gig on IP is easy. Certainly, it is easy.
Just straightforward.
So for that reason, yes, that has generated it. But that is not the only reason, I understand. IP is giving more flexibility of operation and the type of complex production which people are looking for may be feasible by using the IP only in the coming time. Sort of automation which people are talking well for the production, especially for the sports productions. So that those things will be possible with that only. I'll certainly add one more point here. Nobody will throw its working equipment or system. If the system is there, it is working, and requirement is not there. Nobody will buy equipment only for the sake that, okay, since the technology has come, I should add on some fancy thing. No, certainly not. Yes, certainly, if their requirement of production is there to look from the different production point of view, and they still want to be in HD, then in that case, yes, certainly they will look for the IP. But if in case they are looking for the 4K production, then certainly they will look for the video over IP solution, because where they are looking to get the results in a cost-effective way, certainly that adaptation will be there.
Peter, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So when you have your SDI router which is full, do you buy another expensive non-future proof router, or you try to build an SDI workflow for expanding what you have?
You see, I agree with you. If my router is full, I will be going for a bigger router. But at the same time, without IP also, there are solutions available which give distributed routers, which are using the fiber and sort of IP, not exactly IP, uncompressed video going over the by converting that into optics and then taking back from the light back video signal. Those things are available, yes. But I'm not debating over this very point. Yes, certainly, when the need will be there to adopt from the user's point of view, and the economics are visible to the user, then certainly he will adopt.
No, but what I'd also propose that, and I think your question is kind of hit it on the nail, because, okay, yes, there are examples there where the move to IP was because of UHD. However, actually, when you look at a contained studio, in a way, it doesn't matter whether it's SDI or IP. Where the pinch point will be is in the infrastructure in the studio. So the point is this: on the when you have a point-to-point, even if it's a SDI at 625 or HD, you have one point switch. So what you can do with IP is, let's say uncompressed, you have 4 HD channels for the switch of UHD, or obviously even more where there's 625. So the expansion and the infrastructure costs, when you are and this was the problem, let's say, of that UHD truck, of when you have so many cameras, and it doesn't matter whether it's UHD or SD, when you are switching so much, your expansion is so much easier in IP. And you get to a point where you cannot expand your router any further. And this is the safeguard, certainly the safeguard in the move to IP.
I do agree that in case you are looking for a very big setup, complex productions, multiple studios, multiple cameras, interconnecting multiple cities, good broadband available to you, good connectivity is available to you, certainly you will go for IP. to make it future proof. Basic bottom line is money, commercial. How much it will cost you? Yes, courts are being talked about. Why the courts has been brought into in our discussions? Only because to show to the customer, yes, there is a possibility of reducing the cost. But,
Yeah, but
how reliable courts will be? Again, a question mark, which I put in my presentation also. That is from the live transmission point of view, courts, how reliable they are today. How much a broadcaster can depend upon it. Of course, it's a learning process. IP certainly will be replacing SDI in the coming time, but it won't be happening so fast. This is my thinking.
it is. I know in India, we're of course in India context. However, when you look at the costs and the experience is on a new system, in the last, let's say, 2 years, 2 or 3 years, I think most SIs will say that there's actually a premium to go to IP. However, especially with the 2110 standards, the cost is rapidly reducing. The cost of, let's say, IT cables, and whether you talk about cost of weight in an OB van and size and so forth, is reducing the price. So within 2 or 3 years, what you'll find is the actual cost of implementing an IP system versus an SDI system will actually be reduced. It will be less than the SDI. That would be my prediction.
Yeah, I would like to spend maybe a few minutes on Ultra HD since I am the president of the Ultra HD Forum. So, last 2-3 years, people say 2160 P60 is the maximum we can reach with the technology. So people start to buy 4 times 3 gig SDI port with routers, and they connect boxes. Then the sports people come and say, you know what, this is not good. We need 1080p 100. You can throw all your SDI equipment. It's not supported. So if you go IP, in this typical case, you transmit compressed, lightly compressed, whatever format you use, but you can move in the pixel dimension, in the frame rate dimension, and there are many ways you can move with fixed function SDI protocol. Either you fit in the box or you throw away equipment. And this is a real story. I don't make it up. It's coming from broadcasters who tell me we bought wrong equipment. They have not even started the service.
No, I agree with you, and this is what exactly I have also made in my. I have also spoken almost on the same line, that if you are bringing a new facility, or if your need is there, if your requirement is there, as we know that earlier, slow motion or super slow motion was not more than 3 times the speed. I mean, to say 75 frames. Now people are talking 200 frames, people are talking 800 frames, people are talking 1000 frames. So if you have to carry that type of video over SDI, that will be difficult for you to do so. So certainly it is need driven. Yeah. It is the requirement of the customer. So it depends upon that. If you, I remember one example. One of our customer, I will not name that, they wanted to bring their new facility. Because of the space, they have to have 3 buildings. So having the 3 buildings in HD, they want to interconnect all the 3 buildings together. Now, distributed equipment is there. Certainly, they were looking for the IP. But it was about 5 years back, about 2-3 years back. At that time, IP was not that mature as it is today. So in that way, yes, if they would have come to us at this time, we would have suggested, okay, you go for 2110 solution. You go for the boxes which are available, plug it to your existing equipment, and you can do it. So this is how it is.
But let me also make some things clear within the SMPTE 2110 standards. And what I say is when you look at this IP, you move the video world into the IT world. And let me explain why. Within the standard, you just need to say, within your video, what is the frame rate, what is the pixel positioning, and so forth. And you can have any standard. So we're talking 1080i, 1080, whatever. You can choose what you want. So in other words, when I look back and when I was setting up actually a production some years ago, which was actually England versus Sri Lanka in the Oval, and I was doing production switches, and the amount of clean feeds. And even the lawyer was there with, okay, the BBC have paid for this, Sky TV get this, Sri Lanka get this one, and so forth. And the different clean feeds was unbelievable. What you can do is that you just set, I have a logo, and it could be moving logo, and this is my video, and this is all I am sending to Sri Lanka to put on top of their video. So you're not sending a full signal. And this is where, you know, bandwidth equals money, or you could be super slow motion or whatever it might be, and you just set what your video is. So much like when you log on the PC and you get a video, and it could be from any aspect ratio, anything, we then change where we are no longer a set standard. Of course, we have certain standards, but you can basically choose what you want to do. And this will also have cost effectiveness because, as I say, video is bandwidth, right? And this is the important thing. Harmonic do a lot of distribution of video, and bandwidth is money, right?
You may be remembering a few years back when people were not talking of SDI over IP. BBC did the experiment of putting AVC intra 100 compressed video over the IP for interconnecting the OB bands. They bought some people bought some OEMs. They bought some solution in the market also based upon that. I remember. So it is the requirement. It is a requirement. For example, in India, we don't have roads to accommodate big OB vans, large OB van, where we can slide out to accommodate the requirement of the production team, because our stadiums are not connected with that type of roads to take care. So what is we require is small OB vans. So but small OB vans cannot give me that type of results which is expected by the viewer. So what I can do, I can have the OB vans, interconnect them with IP, and use instead of one van, multiple vans. That will be an easy solution for me to do. Yeah. And that is need driven. Yeah. That's what exactly the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, and what I would say is one point, and there's, as I was in a conference in London from the Sports Video Group, and the OB van companies are agreeing amongst themselves, but when they're at, I don't know, a soccer match or cricket match, exactly when they connect up together, what they're sending down that IP cable. So it's just one cable that just goes and leapfrogs between the different bands, and then they're automatically plugging up and they know what they're sending down there. So there are some great advantages. I wonder if we could just finish off. I wondered if there are any questions from the floor, if anybody has any questions. So, okay, I'll just finish off, and maybe if everybody, one by one, maybe starting on my right, say, okay, in, let's say, 3 years in India, where do you expect IP studio workflow will be? And just make a prediction. How many systems will be out there?
No, I can only look for islands within the studio in the coming time.
Yes, exactly. I mean, my presentation is very much about hybrid. So.
I also don't see in the next 3 years any full-fledged studio with full IP to IP connectivity. I don't see anything, because because of the cost and because of the various other adaptability and the training, and people will need that kind of money also, and the possibility of getting the revenue back, because any venture, because commercial venture depends on that. So that's an issue, but island may people will start learning for some things. But personally I feel there should be, whoever does it, in the beginning they should install one studio end-to-end IP, so that the whole ecosystem they will understand, they will be able to utilize the all features of IP and learn, so that they can employ in a bigger system. See, the bigger events, those who are not that much in sequence, means every day that is not there. So for those events, they can hire or lease out the equipments where there is a essential need, like sports coverages and other bigger coverages where, but in the smaller applications or limited one place requirement, it will be wiser to have continue for some time with the already invested equipment, and whenever the need, there is a time to replace the equipment, that time only we should see. When we have to actually replace this system, declaring it is an obsolete, and we have to buy a new one, that time we should take a call whether to go for SDI itself or go for IP, one studio.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just throw that. I think the capital costs is the same or maybe even less IP. I think the bigger hurdle is the training and the
training, adaptation, understanding, and the capital cost is not only the network, it is in the end equipment base, in between equipment and my measuring and monitoring equipment. Because the moment we go to IP, there will be, if there is a cascading, the producers, those who are going to produce, they will have to understand the video is somewhere else. They have to switch here, but the switch is not actually transporting all camera output to the same switcher at that point of time. It is only when they click the thing that video will come. So that is the
new way
issue.
Of working. It's a new way of working. It's a matter of learning.
It's a new way of working. People have to understand and visualize the cause and effect. What the action I am doing and how it will go on air. That visualization they have to do practically and experience. Then only they can do it for a longer, bigger system.
Okay, I'm going to give the last word for Thierry.
What an honor. So I just wanted to remind you that in 2016, India was broadcasting the Cricket World Cup. And this was in Ultra HD. And people were surprised to see India taking such a leap. This was not very successful. Tata Sky didn't get that many subscribers, but you could see a drive. I think this type of company, if they do seriously Ultra HD, they probably think twice before putting SDI router. The second type of company I think will start to really invest in IP is the new production company coming from the new service providers. Like Geo, they are coming the clean sheet. They say, okay, let's do this production for this type of channel, and this is people coming from another space. They are not been that many years in the broadcast space, as you know. And I'm quite hopeful to see newcomers to move much faster. Look at Netflix as an example, right? When they started, people say, okay, they are not that impactful. Today, they have 100 million subscribers because they brought a new way to play with technology, to produce the content, to deliver the content. So think that there are new ways to deliver, to produce the content, and it's not everything done in the old way.
Correct. See, that is true. That is, it is always good for a new beginner to enter in a new technology, because they don't have any legacy equipment or legacy knowledge also. So they are free from that. That is why they are. It is wiser and easier for them to invest in the new technology. That's what we have seen in DTH world also. When we started, it was DVB-S MPEG 2. but a few years later, those who entered later, they went for DVB S2 MPEG 4 boxes from the day one. So they get an advantage on the technology and the cost of operation and bandwidth. That is always there and it will be there, because that cannot be avoided.
Sir, may I have a question directly
Yes,
to you from
please
you?
do.
What is your opinion about the TICO compression?
Yeah. So
Because that will give you 1:4, and
yeah.
you know, my company Panasonic, they have already bought a 4K camera with TICO output.
Yes.
So that camera is already available. I'm going to
Yes.
say bringing down by 1/4 the bandwidth requirement.
Yeah. So I think there's a debate in the industry. I will not give you the final answer. I know some of the customers are interested by this technology, some are not interested. And if you move, that's why I presented in my presentation the deployment environment. If you do TICO in hardware, maybe you can do it easily. If you put TICO in 4K in software, this is a different conversation. So never forget, in all the conversation we have, IP-SDI, it's not about the connectivity, it's the deployment environment. The answer will vary depending on the deployment environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
But have you seen the TICO working?
Yes,
I want to say
yes.
quality-wise, how
Yes.
many generation it can take? Any idea?
I am not an expert. I know the impact on the deployment environment. I assume it works, but I'm questioning what resolution and what deployment environment.
Yeah. So,
Gordon.
just for the audience, the TICO, it is a 4-to-1 compression, which allows basically a UHD signal to route through a normal HD switch, so that people understand. So if I summarize, of course, IP workflow within the production environment is maybe not there yet. And it will start to come in as maybe perhaps my presentation as a hybrid in the next 2 to 3 years. So it is coming, and you know the important thing is, as I put at the end, you know, educate yourself on the standards. The new standards are offering bidirectional, they're offering multi-formats and so forth. So there's a lot of benefits, but you have to understand, you know, the new SMPTE standards. So you know, please take focus on that. And also, you know, let's say the education, the training side is really key to the rollout of IP.
So Peter, I want also to advertise the AIMS organization, which is doing a lot of work. You have white paper available, free. You can read, and you will get a lot of answer to your question. Because AIMS is not about pushing things. It's also explaining how it works, how it was tested, and I think the operational guidelines is probably the next to come, coming from broadcasters, not vendors, because the vendors, they don't operate. They just give you tools. So I think AIMS...
What I would say is that you know, just for transparency, the IABM, we have what we call an industrial collaborative group, of which AIMS is part of our group, where we also educate people about AIMS. And a fantastic source of understanding about AIMS and the IP workflow. We have done with AIMS at NAB and IBC many sessions which are open on the internet. So you can search IP Theatre AIMS or IP Theatre IABM, which you can get free of charge on the internet. There's a lot of experience and knowledge from that. And also, of course, because it's a SMPTE standard, SMPTE themselves have a lot of videos on the website, you know, as well. So there's a lot of information free of charge on the internet. It's just time.
No, in fact, actually, everybody knows that AIMS has played a very big role, which has resulted in SMPT to bring 2110.
Yeah, I mean, and okay, you mentioned things like Aspen on your presentation, but the most important thing is what AIMS has done in the last 2 to 3 years is focus heads together to get to one standard. And that's, or let's say, it's not a standard. I may make it clear about AIMS.
So it's an industry recommendation.
Recommendation that people follow one.
At this stage, it is only recommendation.
Yeah. Well,
but do you think it will be
interoperability, which I doubt a bit because I know it's going to take time.
Yes. Okay, we'll finish that, and thank you very much, everybody, for staying to the end today. Thank you.
Now we come to an end of our session, last session for the day. Thank you all the speakers for your valuable remarks and your valuable time. I'll request my colleague to please hand over the token of appreciation to Mr. Peter Bruce. Thank you, sir. Thank you.